All right, this is my audience. 3. All right, I'm going to give them the camera to hold. Hi, everybody. Tonight I'm going to talk to you the reasons why the Electoral College should not be abolished and why it's necessary. It's a necessary scheme for us to use in the United States for proper voting in presidential elections. So I kind of just wanted to start by saying that the Electoral College kind of creates an even playing field in terms of population in the United States. If we were to solely rely on the popular vote in the United States, there's problems with people who don't vote. There's problems with people who are counting votes and inconsistent rules about counting votes within each state differently. Some states use machinery to count votes. Some states use people to count votes, and that would cause a lot of recounts because, as we know, a lot of presidential elections are pretty close elections. And I also kind of wanted to talk about the policies of the Electoral College and why they're necessary for the United States and why basically the Electoral College is a necessity and that we'd be in a lot of trouble if it were to be abolished. So today I'm going to start off by talking about the policies involved with the Electoral College. So there is a quote on the National Archives that says that the Electoral College, this is like a definition, the Electoral College is a process, not a place. The Founding Fathers established it into the Constitution as a compromise between election of the president by vote in Congress and election of president by a popular vote of qualified citizens. So basically, dating back to since the Constitution was written, our Constitution was established, the Founding Fathers created this voting basically scheme or mechanism or kind of governing technique to put all these congressmen together and to create a vote that would allot a certain number of votes within the government for each state. And I think that this is necessary because I think that a lot of people in the United States don't vote in general. So the Electoral College kind of helps in that aspect because the people who aren't voting or the states who don't have a bigger turnout, the Electoral College kind of makes up for those people who aren't voting because their state is using their votes allotted for the Electoral College to kind of put towards the presidential election. Additionally, population makes a big difference. So even though Electoral College votes are allotted, there's more allotted votes in bigger states such as California or Texas, the numbers even out so that it's a pretty even playing field for political parties and people to vote for what they believe in. So next, I wanted to talk about the problems with counting the popular vote. So this is a big problem that we see a lot in popular votes. In the last election, when Hillary Clinton ran against Donald Trump, the popular vote, I think before it was pretty finalized, there were a lot of recounts going on. And the problem with that is because there's so many people in this country, approximately like 600 million people in this country, and if a majority of those people are voting in the presidential election, I mean, you can only imagine counting those votes and how accurate that counting can be. And a big problem is that there's different ways of counting votes within each state. So it's inconsistent counting methods. Some states, like I said earlier, use machines to count, which is probably more accurate than people counting. But other states do use people who count votes, and it's an interesting and kind of a slippery slope because people say they have bias or not. You have to worry about integrity when counting votes. You have to worry about if people are being honest when they're counting votes because I think everybody has an opinion, and when you have people that are counting votes, it can cause inconsistencies and problems with voting in the presidential election. But I found a quote, a study from the Huffington Post that says, because there was a difference of less than 1,000 tabulated votes between George W. Bush, this was the Bush election, and Al Gore in one state, Florida, the nation watched as 6 million votes were recounted by machine. Several hundred thousand were recounted by hand in counties with differing recount standards. So, like I said, there's different standards in each state, but 6 million votes to even be counted by a machine is a lot of time and a lot of probably work by people. So this kind of just shows, like I said, the inconsistencies and problems with people voting through the popular vote and how if we just voted on that solely, it could create problems with correct numbers and also integrity. A second study that I found also through the Huffington Post says that nightmare may seem like a pleasant dream if NPV has its way. For under its plan, the next time the U.S. has very close national vote, a recount would not be of 6 million votes in one state, but more than 130 million votes in all states and the District of Columbia, all with their own rules for counting and recount. Like I said earlier, just different policies on counting and standards for each state, and counting 130 million votes. I think that if we were to solely rely on that and the popular vote and recounting all those votes, that's a lot of extra time, that's a lot of extra money that the government is spending that I just find unnecessary, and I find it not as, I guess, accurate as if we were to just use the Electoral College to make votes. All right. Next, I wanted to talk about the major pros of the Electoral College and why it's necessary for our country. And I'm going to start out by this quote that says, "The Founding Fathers enriched the Electoral College in the U.S. Constitution because they thought it was the best method to choose the president." So, like I said earlier, when this Constitution was created, our Founding Fathers wanted this to be the method for which we used when we were choosing which candidates won the presidential election. And I think that if we were to go against what was initially set forth in this country, we wouldn't be abiding by the policies that the Founding Fathers, the people that essentially founded this country, wanted for us to do. And I think that that's a lot of times, there's a lot of controversy because that was a long time ago, but I think that especially nowadays, using the Electoral College as the Founding Fathers would have wanted us to do creates a more successful election season, and I think that it's something that should always be kind of ingrained in the voting system within the United States. The second quote I want to talk about was, "The Electoral College ensures that all parts of the country are involved in selecting the President of the United States." I think this is a huge one because I think there's a lot of people that kind of disregard voting, and they think, voting isn't something that everybody has the chance to do where they live. A lot of places don't follow a democracy. And I think that having the right and the ability to vote in an election is something that we should all be thankful for. But a big problem in this country is that people don't vote. And I think that when people don't vote, it skews the election one way or the other, depending on what political party you participate in. And I think that this fixes that, because the Electoral College ensures that every state has a certain number of people who can vote within that state. And that kind of solves the problem of people not voting, because the people in the Electoral College will always be able to cast votes, and there won't be any weird skews or sways because people aren't participating. But the Electoral College ensures that every person from that specific state is voting, which creates a more proper and a more effective election. All right. And so basically, thank you guys for listening. I'm just going to conclude that in this speech, we discussed the problems that go along with counting the popular votes and the inconsistencies that stand with people counting versus machines counting versus standards within different states, problems with integrity, problems with opinion, especially when it comes to politics. There's a lot of opinions. It's probably one of the most opinionated things. Definitely something that's a touchy subject. So, the Electoral College kind of fixes that, because if we were to solely rely on the popular vote, who knows the true integrity of the election. We also discussed the major pros of utilizing the Electoral College, how every state has a certain number of participants who are allotted to vote in the election, which ensures that each state has the people voting. This solves the problem of people not voting, and yeah. And I also talked about the policy of the Electoral College and kind of just the logistics of it, and how each state has a certain number of representatives that can vote, and how this ensures that we kind of just have a successful election. But thank you guys for listening, and I hope I kind of helped persuade you that the Electoral College is necessary for voting within the United States. Thank you.